Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of the Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to watch today's video. Always very grateful to have you guys around here. We're going to be talking about fishing one of my favorite pre-spawn type of areas for bass today, which is a secondary point. Secondary points are amongst, I definitely would put them in the top 3 bass structures during the pre-spawn when the water temperature is between, say, like 47 and 58, 59 degrees. Excellent structure. So we're going to give you guys some good tips and advice on how to approach it today and how to get set up on them. I think it's going to help you guys out over the next couple of months here. I've also got a couple of quick housekeeping tips, just a quick invitation to invite everybody to please consider subscribing here to the Fishing Teacher. It's free and easy. All you got to do is just hit that subscribe button. It's a good way to help out the channel. And also thank you very much, guys, for everybody that's been using my tackle warehouse link that I put in the description to purchase your fishing tackle. If you guys want to help out the Fishing Teacher in return for some of this information, if you just bookmark and use my tackle warehouse link every time you need fishing tackle, it's a good way to support the channel. The channel gets a little bit of small percentage of a commission on anything you buy, so that's a good way to help out, and I really appreciate that. Okay, we've been doing a lot of stuff, guys, lately on pre-spawn fishing, because at the time of filming this video, we're in the middle of February, and we're starting to get in what is considered the pre-spawn time of the year. I really consider the pre-spawn period as when that water temperature starts warming up probably 5 degrees above its coldest point of the year. Now in January, normally you've got your coldest temperatures, and once that water temperature starts warming up, like I said, about 5 degrees above where your water temperature has bottomed out, and a lot of times this is sort of in the end of February, into March, depending upon weather patterns, that's when those fish start moving into what is called the pre-spawn pattern, where they start staging in these areas, getting ready in the preparation for the whole spawning ritual. And they're doing a lot of feeding here. During the pre-spawn, in these staging areas, they're feeding up heavily on shad and perch and crawdads, whatever they can catch, because spawning takes a lot out of a bass. I mean, whether it be a male or a female, the males have to, build the nest and, do all the stuff they do, guard the fry. Females lay the eggs. It's a really exhausting time for the fish, so that's a good time to catch fish because they're really feeding up for it. Okay, secondary points. Let's talk a little bit about that. Now, just since the Fishing Teacher, I try to stay more on the beginner, intermediate level here. If you don't know what a secondary point is, it's a point that is usually located within the inside of like a major creek arm or a cove in a lake. Now, main lake points are just what they say. They're points that are on the main lake, but secondary points would be, let's say, for example, you go into just a creek arm off the lake you're fishing, and if you have a point within that creek arm, that's considered a secondary point. And sometimes, let's say if you go back into a big cove or a bay, and there's a point inside of that cove or bay, that's considered a secondary point. Now, these points, one of the things about them is points are not all the same. It's like points can be really defined, and they come to a really defined point, or they can be a real gradual rounded point that almost doesn't even look like a point. You can have underwater secondary points where the bank, you can't really tell there's a point there, but there's an underwater point on it. Or you can have just some type of a outcropping or rock feature that's as big as your boat, something like that. But those are secondary points. They're that's the delineation for them. And these are some of the favorite areas for bass guys. Bass love secondary points in the pre-spawn time of the year because it offers a good area for them to be in relative close proximity to their spawning areas. Because most of the time, since those secondary points are in creek and cove arms, they are at the entrance of a cove that a lot of the fish like to spawn in. So they'll just hang out there on those points, waiting for the water to warm up enough where they can get in there and start spawning. Now, here's some good things to remember as far as techniques on pre-spawn points. A lot of it has to do, like so much in bass fishing, with your water clarity and your water temperature. So I sort of want to run through some different scenarios here that will get you set up on what to look for on pre-spawn fishing. Now, if you're fishing a lake that has some off-colored water in it, let's say your water visibility is under 2 foot in the lake that you fish, those fish are going to be shallower on those pre-spawn points. And normally the water needs to be a little warmer. So if you're fishing a stained water lake, I really like that water temperature to be at least about 50 degrees to get to catch fish on those points. Now the points can be, it can be gravel, clay, rock, whatever. The structure of the point's not really as important as how it's positioned close to a spawning area. But if I'm fishing a stained water lake, I start hitting it when that water temperature starts to get about 50 degrees. And some of the good baits, since those fish are going to be normally in less than 5 or 6 foot of water, is going to be some type of a shallow running crankbait, maybe a crawdad pattern. A lipless crankbait can be pretty good. Spinnerbait, chatterbait, anything that you can fish, effectively in say 2 to 5 foot of water. Usually some type of a power bait. I don't do much slow fishing during the pre-spawn in the dirty water, conditions. Now, as that water cleans up a little bit, depending upon how clean it gets, let's go to the next zone. Say we've got 2 to 4 foot of visibility. Now, once you get 2 to 4 foot of visibility, you're going to start having a couple different things take place. There's going to be some bass suspended and some bass on the bottom a little bit deeper. And, you just need to adjust to that. Now, if I've got 2 to 4 foot of water visibility and the water temperature, again, is upper 40s to low 50s, probably my 2 favorite lures for pre-spawn fishing is an Alabama rig or jerkbait. They cover those areas really well. One of the things that's going to help you out if you have that type of water visibility during the pre-spawn is to have a little bit of wind and a little bit of clouds on that point for the jerkbait and the A-rig. Those are things that really activate the fish on those 2 particular places. And when you've got 2 to 4 foot of water visibility, most of the time I'm going to be targeting that 5 to 10 foot of range on those points. Now, if you have water visibility clearer than 4 feet or 3.5 or 4 feet, you need to look for a lot of the fish to be suspended or even deeper, even in the pre-spawn there. Now, if I've got water clarity of 4 foot or greater, I'm going to really be concentrating on having my boat like in that 15 to 20, maybe 25 foot zone, fishing smaller swim baits, fishing the jerk bait again. A shaky head can be really good, and also like a football head jig. In the late pre-spawn, like when that water temperature is in the mid-50s, one of the best ways to catch bass that time of year, guys, is to fish a Ned rig or a shaky head on those secondary points. As long as you've got water visibility of over 3 feet, if you gave me one scenario that's just super fun to fish, is get a lake that's got 4 foot of visibility or so and get out there with a shaky head and a Ned rig and sort of concentrate on that, probably about 7 to 25 foot zone, depending how clear it is. And a lot of those bigger fish will hang out there in that 15 to 25 foot zone, waiting to move up to spawn. And football head jig, shaky head, Ned rig is a really, really good way to catch them. A lot of these type of areas during the spring when the water temperature's in the 50s, like I said with the Alabama rig, it's very wind oriented. Wind is definitely going to help you out on this. As long as that water temperature is over 50 degrees, your power baits on those secondary points are really going to be a big advantage to it. Overall, you're going to catch your bigger fish on an Alabama rig on these secondary points. You're probably going to catch the most fish on either like a Ned rig, a shaky head, or a jerkbait. Jerkbait, you can catch big numbers too. Overall, jerkbait and Alabama rig is going to be 2 of my big players for that. Now, I don't fish crankbaits that much on secondary points that time of year unless the water's dirty. Then I'll fish, crank shallower on the bank there. But it just seems like to me that crankbait during the pre-spawn works a little bit better, more on steep or rocky banks. Again, unless the water is pretty stained and dirty where you can get up shallow with it. But main thing, guys, is just, if you're fishing anytime that water temperature is in the 50s during the pre-spawn and you don't know much about the lake and you don't know much about where you want to fish at, just start running secondary points. There's bass that live on those things big time, during this time of year. And don't just fish the point also. When you see a nice secondary point, stop about probably 50 to 75 yards from the point and start working towards the point, and then work about 50 or 75 yards around the other side of it. Because I have found in my own experience, the best place on a secondary point is not out on the end of the point, it's on the sides of the point. Again, 50 yards or so down, maybe even 100 yards, just keep working your way down away from the point until you start running out of strikes. But just really, really good places to fish for bass. So hope it helps you guys out. We'll talk later.